Night sky over Manhattan was an electric canvas of flashing lights, buzzing drones, and glowing billboards as Fashion Week reached its most anticipated evening. The venue, an iconic Gotha SS-walled building on the Upper East Side, shimmered like a jewel under the attention of paparazzi lenses. Music pulsed from inside, a hypnotic rhythm that made the red carpet outside feel like a stage before the stage. Stretch limousines and sleek black town cars rolled up one after another, spilling out celebrities, influencers, and the elite of the fashion world. Photographers shouted names, their cameras firing in staccato bursts. Champagne glasses clinked under the grand awning, and conversations buzzed about upcoming collections, whispered scandals, and secret collaborations. And then he appeared, Ramiz Khan, tall, impeccably dressed in a custom midnight blue tuxedo with satin lapels, his hair slicked back to perfection, the faintest whiff of an expensive cologne trailing him. He had the effortless charm of a man who knew every camera loved him. His lips curled into that signature smirk as he stepped out of the limousine and extended his hand not to his wife, but to the woman beside him, Maya. She emerged in a crimson gown that seemed designed to provoke headlines. Thigh-high slit, plunging neckline, shimmering beadwork that caught every flashbulb. She clung to his arm as if she belonged there, her diamond earrings swaying with each step. The crowd erupted with cheers, the MC announcing Ramiz Khan and his stunning companion. The word companion slid out like gossip waiting to be confirmed. Ramiz basked in the attention, waving to the cameras, leaning toward Maya to whisper something that made her laugh in that high, artificial way meant for public display, guided her toward the press wall, posing for photos like they were royalty. Questions flew. Who's the designer? Are you to the new power couple? And he let the ambiguity hang, feeding the narrative without ever correcting it. He didn't notice the woman watching him from the shadows of the mezzanine above the entrance. Alina. Her black dress was the opposite of Maya's spectacle. A floor-length silk creation with long sleeves, high neckline, and subtle detailing only the most discerning would appreciate. The gown draped gracefully over her figure, concealing the gentle curve of her 6-month pregnancy. Her makeup was understated but flawless. Her dark hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. From her vantage point, she saw every angle of his performance, the confident gestures, the faux intimacy, the way he thrived under the mistaken belief that the world thought Maya was the woman by his side. He thought she was home, resting, keeping her fragile condition safe, as he'd so condescendingly instructed before boarding his flight to New York. But Alina was not here as a scorned wife seeking a scene. She was here as something far more dangerous. In her clutch bag rested a VIP pass with her real identity. Not Mrs. Ramiz Khan, not a plus one, but Alina Rahman Khan, majority shareholder. Because months ago, when Ramiz had been too busy flaunting his fortune to notice, she had quietly invested in the fashion label hosting tonight's runway show. And not just invested, bought the controlling stake through discreet shell companies. Now, standing in the shadows while he paraded his mistress under the very banner she owned, Alina felt no urge to cry or rage. Only a slow, simmering satisfaction that the game had already shifted, and Ramiz didn't even know he was playing on her board. The runway lights inside dimmed, signaling the show was about to begin. Alina took one last look at her husband's smug face under the strobe of paparazzi flashes, and allowed herself the faintest, coldest smile. Tonight would not end the way he imagined. The memory began like a faded photograph in Alina's mind, warm sunlight spilling through their tiny apartment window, the scent of freshly brewed coffee, and Ramiz laughing as he scribbled notes on a business plan at their kitchen table. Back then, he didn't have a tailored suit or a chauffeur waiting outside. He had dreams, bold, fragile dreams, and Alina had been his anchor. When his first 2 ventures failed, it was her quiet persistence that kept him from giving up. She dipped into her inheritance, the money her late father had left her, to pay off debts, rent, and suppliers who were on the verge of suing him. She didn't see it as charity. She saw it as an investment in their shared future. One day, he'd promised, holding her hands, "We'll look back at this and laugh over champagne in Paris." But success changes people, as Ramiz's businesses finally began to turn a profit. The man who once cherished late-night takeout and couch cuddles began chasing rooftop parties and expensive whiskey. The phone calls grew shorter, the business trips longer. His smiles for her became rarer, replaced by clipped answers and distracted nods. At first she thought it was stress. She told herself he just needed space to handle the pressures of expansion. But then, subtle changes became impossible to ignore. He started keeping 2 phones, one he always left lying around, and another that never left his pocket. He began receiving mysterious calls late at night, stepping out onto the balcony to answer them in a hushed tone. The first time she saw him with Maya was through a friend's Instagram story. It was a charity auction. Ramiz stood at the podium, in a midnight blue suit, his arm wrapped around a striking woman in a shimmering silver dress. They were laughing, heads tilted toward each other, like they shared a private joke. Alina's stomach had twisted painfully. The friend had sent a message shortly after. "Thought you'd be here too. Didn't know he was bringing her." When she asked Ramiz about it later, he brushed it off with a lazy smirk. A business contact. She helps open doors. Don't get jealous over nothing. But nothing soon started appearing in tabloids. Sitting beside him at luncheons, traveling with him to meet investors in Dubai, the night Alina found the final proof. It wasn't through photos or rumors, it was through the scent of perfume. Not hers, not even subtle. Maya's fragrance was sharp, expensive, and clung to the collar of his shirt like a confession. That same night, she discovered she was pregnant. The timing was cruel. Her heart swelled with the joy of impending motherhood, but cracked under the weight of betrayal. Confronting him now would mean a public scandal, messy legal battles, and a man who would twist the truth until she was painted as the unstable, hormonal wife. So, she said nothing. Instead, she began building something quietly in the background. She reconnected with old contacts in the fashion industry, people she'd met years ago at charity galas and networking dinners. Through discreet channels and shell companies, she began investing heavily in a luxury fashion label on the brink of collapse. Under her strategic direction, and without Ramiz knowing, the brand began to rise again. Its rebirth timed perfectly to coincide with the biggest event of the year, New York Fashion Week. If Ramiz thought she was sitting at home, nursing her pregnancy and ignorance, he was in for the performance of his life. She wouldn't just confront him. She would expose him where it hurt the most under the brightest lights, in front of the people whose approval he craved. And she would do it with a smile. The evening rain streaked against the glass walls of Alina's study, tapping like impatient fingers. Her laptop screen glowed softly in the dim room as she scrolled through an article. Eclat Looks, the fashion brand making waves in New York, had announced they were seeking investors to fuel their next expansion. Alina's lips curved into a faint smile. She knew Ramiz had been obsessed with the brand for months, talking about its vision and global appeal as if it were a symbol of everything he wanted to be. He'd dropped hints at dinner parties about securing a collaboration with them, casually mentioning how he could get their creative director to see things his way. It was ironic he had no idea the opportunity he craved was already within her grasp. She reached for her phone and called Asadi, her family's longtime lawyer, whose loyalty had never wavered. I need you to arrange a discreet investment, she said without preamble. No public records with my name, not even whispers. Within a week, Assad had worked his magic, weaving a maze of shell companies and offshore accounts that would keep her involvement invisible. Through this structure, Alina acquired a 51% controlling share of Eclat Looks. The figure wasn't just a stake, it was power. It meant every major decision the brand made, from its creative direction to its financial partnerships, ultimately answered to her. 2 days later, she stepped into the penthouse office of Eclat Looks' CEO, Vivienne Armand, a tall, impeccably dressed woman with an air of elegance sharpened by years in the fashion trenches. Vivienne extended her hand, eyes appraising yet respectful. I'm told you wish to remain anonymous, Vivienne said, ushering her to a leather armchair. For now, Alina replied. I'm not here to plaster my face on magazine covers. I'm here to grow this brand and to make sure it's aligned with a specific vision. Vivienne arched a brow. And what vision is that? Alina leaned forward. I want Eclat Looks to be remembered for elegance with substance. Not just runway glitz, but the kind of statement that outlasts trends. For this show, I want models who embody strength, designs that carry whispers of resilience. There's a message I need delivered. Even if most won't understand it at first. Vivienne studied her for a moment before nodding. I can work with that. And with 51%, she smiled faintly. You can work with anything you want. From that moment, Alina's influence began threading its way into the heart of Eclat Looks. She sat in on closed-door design reviews, giving quiet suggestions that subtly shifted the collection. The colors took on deeper tones, crimson, obsidian, and gold rich with symbolism. The show's finale piece, once planned as a safe, sparkling gown, was reimagined into a sleek, commanding silhouette that exuded quiet dominance. Even the model casting changed under her direction. Gone were the overly familiar faces of Ramiz's social circle. In their place were women with compelling stories, survivors, entrepreneurs, activists. They wouldn't be giving interviews about her, but their presence would speak volumes to those who knew where to look, and Alina made sure there would be something for Ramiz to look at. She approved an exclusive frontierlist and, interestingly, ensured that he was invited with a guest pass, not as a partner of the brand, but as a mere attendee. She began coordinating with the PR team, crafting the event to be as visually magnetic as possible, knowing Ramiz's ego would never let him miss a chance to be photographed in such a setting. That by the time her plans were set in motion, the brand was buzzing with anticipation for its Fashion Week debut. Ramiz still strutted through life oblivious, thinking he was circling Eclat Looks like a predator eyeing his prey. But the truth was simple. The prey had been claimed long ago, and the real hunter was already pulling the strings from the shadows. Alina closed her laptop, her hand resting lightly over her belly. She whispered softly, almost to herself, let's give your father a show he'll never forget. In the weeks following Fashion Week, Maya became a constant presence in Ramiz Khan's orbit. She thrived on the glances, the whispers, the camera, flashes, all feeding her growing delusion that she was destined to be more than just a mistress. She began appearing at industry mixers and boutique openings on Rames's arm, posing for photographs with her signature smirk and head tilt. The one she thought made her look effortlessly glamorous. Ramesh, flattered by the attention and charmed by Maya's seeming confidence, allowed her to inch closer into his personal and business affairs. What began as her just tagging along soon shifted into her whispering suggestions about which contacts to pursue, which events to sponsor, and which designers to collaborate with. Her tone implied expertise, but her advice was often shallow, aimed more at keeping herself in the limelight than strengthening Rames's business. One afternoon, during a brunch at an upscale Manhattan rooftop, Maya's ambition slipped into plain sight. Surrounded by a small cluster of influencers and junior editors from fashion magazines, she leaned toward the PR manager of Eclat Looks and said with casual authority, "Honestly, the brand needs a fresh face. Someone relatable, yet aspirational. I could totally see myself in that role." Her voice dripped with faux modesty, but her eyes sparkled with greed. She went on, describing her vision for the brand's image: photo shoots in Santorini, glossy spreads in Vogue, perfume ads with her draped in silk under chandeliers. What Maya didn't know was that every detail of this conversation, down to her exact words, would be repeated within hours to Alina, the PR manager, loyal to the brand's CEO, and by extension to its mysterious majority investor, sent a discreet email outlining Maya's pitch and her growing push to become the campaign's centerpiece. That evening, in her penthouse office, Alina read the report with a faint smile. It was exactly as she had expected. Maya was impatient, overconfident, and far too eager to claim what wasn't hers. Alina understood that egos like Maya's were best dismantled not with confrontation but with opportunity, the kind that looked like a gift but was really a trap. Within days, Alina approved Maya's involvement in a series of small photo shoots for the brand's social media. They were glamorous enough to excite Maya, but insignificant in the grand scheme of the brand's positioning. The CEO, following Alina's discreet instructions, told Maya she had real potential but needed to prove herself to the board before being considered for the face of Eclat Looks. The effect was instantaneous. Maya dove into the shoots with reckless enthusiasm, hiring her own stylist, posting behind-the-scenes clips, and hinting to her growing follower base that big news was coming. She began arriving late to dinners with Ramesh, distracted by phone calls about lighting and wardrobe. Ramesh, both amused and slightly irritated, teased her about becoming a little diva, but he never suspected this was being orchestrated. Meanwhile, Alina ensured every photo shoot choice, from the wardrobe to the creative direction, subtly undermined Maya's glamour. The lighting was too harsh, the makeup overdone, the outfits just shy of flattering. Not enough to be obvious sabotage, but enough to ensure the campaign footage would fail to capture the effortless elegance Maya imagined. Maya didn't notice. She only saw herself under the studio lights, convinced she was ascending toward fashion royalty. Ramesh, dazzled by her confidence and oblivious to the brand's real power structure, began casually mentioning to business associates that his girlfriend might soon be the new face of Eclat Luxe. And Alina, hidden behind her majority share and carefully constructed silence, allowed the illusion to grow. The higher Maya climbed on her self-built pedestal, the harder the fall would be, and the more satisfying the moment Alina would choose to push. The countdown to New York Fashion Week felt like the city itself had been wound tight with a golden thread, every moment vibrating with tension and anticipation. For Ramesh, this was more than just a fashion show. It was his self-appointed coronation into the elite echelon of high society. The towering banners of Eclat Looks fluttered in the summer wind across Manhattan streets, each poster and social media teaser feeding his ego like oxygen to a flame. From his penthouse office, he spent hours reviewing seating charts, media lists, and VIP RSVPs, his phone glued to his ear as he boasted to potential investors about the connections he was about to cement. He saw himself as a man on the verge of becoming untouchable. If only he knew the silent architect of his fate was working from the shadows, smiling quietly as every piece moved into place. Alina, operating through the CEO and her trusted lawyer, had her own master plan. The finale lineup, the one moment every camera would capture, had been subtly altered. It wasn't the models Ramesh thought would close the show. She had woven a quiet disruption into the very heart of the event. The crowd wouldn't see it coming, and neither would he. Influence extended beyond the runway. Using her controlling share, she sent personal invitations to media magnates, high-profile CEOs, and even a few key government officials with ties to the banking sector, people whose opinions carried enough weight to ruin reputations. She wanted the room packed with the kind of witnesses who didn't just gossip, they made headlines. Meanwhile, Ramesh and Maya moved through the fashion circles like a glittering, shallow dream. Maya was intoxicated by the idea of becoming the face of Eclat Looks. Every dress fitting, every mock interview, every practice pose for the photographers fed her vanity. She had no idea the very campaign she thought would elevate her was being positioned by Alina to expose her. In a quiet corner of the city, Alina stood before a floor-length mirror in her private dressing room. The black velvet gown draped over her figure was simple at first glance, modest even, but the precision of its tailoring made it breathtaking. The high neckline and fitted sleeves spoke of power, not seduction. The flowing train gave her presence, her very walk meant to command attention. Beneath the gown, the subtle curve of her pregnancy was visible only when she wanted it to be. It was armor and statement in one. She practiced her entrance, not because she doubted her poise, but because she wanted every step to land like a calculated strike. The night wasn't just about revealing herself, it was about revealing him. The final week before the gala, the city's fashion insiders buzzed with speculation. Rumors flew about surprise celebrity appearances, a possible royalty sighting, and whispers of a mystery patron who had made Eclat looks' most daring show possible. Even Ramiz had heard the chatter but dismissed it as irrelevant background noise. He was too consumed with imagining the headlines the next morning. Millionaire Ramiz Khan shines at Fashion Week. Back at her penthouse, Alina's last task was checking the discreet list of press credentials. Every major outlet was confirmed. Even international networks had secured front row seats. The trap was nearly ready, and every unsuspecting guest would play their part perfectly. When the final email was sent and the last call was made, Alina stood by her balcony, gazing at the Manhattan skyline. She rested a hand over her belly, feeling the steady kick of the life within her. Almost time, she whispered. The city below shimmered like a stage set for war, and she was ready to win. The night air outside the Manhattan Pavilion shimmered with camera flashes. The venue's facade glowed under towering spotlights. A red carpet stretching like a promise of immortality to those who dared walk it, and reporters pressed against velvet ropes. Microphones and cameras jostling for the perfect shot. The first roar of paparazzi shutters came when a sleek black Rolls-Royce slid up to the curb. Rami stepped out first, his tuxedo gleaming under the strobes, his smile practiced to perfection. Maya followed, wearing a gold body-hugging gown with a thigh-high slit, her hand hooked around his arm like a trophy on display. Ramiz, Maya, over here. Photographers shouted, their voices bouncing off the marble walls. The couple turned toward the lenses, laughing together in exaggerated ease, posing like a magazine spread come to life. But somewhere down the line, the tone began to shift. A cluster of reporters who had been reviewing background notes suddenly leaned toward each other. Wait, isn't he married? That's not his wife. Then why are they walking the carpet together? The whispers spread like spilled ink, dark and impossible to ignore. Paparazzi still snapped away, but some lenses lingered too long on Rami's smug smile, framing it in a new, less flattering light. Inside, the venue pulsed with pre-show excitement, the air thick with perfume and ambition. Neither Ramiz nor Maya noticed that the usual chorus of flattery felt thinner. Tonight, they were too busy preening for cameras and giving sound bites about redefining elegance. Half an hour later, the street outside shifted again. A black town car pulled up quietly, its tinted door opening without fanfare. Alina stepped out slowly, her black velvet gown absorbing the light rather than reflecting it, her poise commanding attention without a single word. At first she didn't approach the main carpet, instead she slipped through a side path toward the VIP entrance. Photographers, distracted by another celebrity arrival, barely caught her silhouette until an event coordinator froze mid-sentence, glancing down at their clipboard. Ma'am, you're the coordinator's eyes widened. They leaned toward their earpiece, speaking in a hushed, urgent tone. Within moments, the CEO of Eclat Looks himself appeared at the entrance, breaking away from a conversation with two investors. Mrs. Alina Khan, he greeted warmly, extending a hand with an almost ceremonial formality. It's an honor. Please, let me take you to your seat. The shift in energy was palpable. A couple of nearby reporters craned their necks, sensing something was unfolding. Photographers began to turn their lenses toward the VIP corridor. Alina moved with quiet grace, her train gliding behind her, the velvet catching the light just enough to make the subtle curve of her pregnancy unmistakable. The CEO personally guided her past rows of curious onlookers until they reached the front row, the seats reserved for the most influential attendees. He gestured toward the prime spot, directly beside the mayor's impeccably dressed wife. I saved this one for you, he said, and though his tone was polite, there was a knowing gleam in his eye. The mayor's wife turned with a smile, offering her hand. I've heard so much about you, she said warmly, her voice carrying just far enough for the guests behind them to catch. By now, whispers were starting in the audience too. Some guests subtly checked the event program. Others glanced toward the entrance, connecting the dots between Ramiz on the carpet and the woman now seated front and center. Backstage, a junior publicist rushed toward Ramiz's assistant. You need to know. She's here. Who? His wife. The assistant's eyes flickered toward the audience, but it was too late. Alina was already settled in, a vision of quiet power, her presence alone sending ripples through the glittering surface of the evening. The first shockwave had landed, and the night was far from over. The lights dimmed to a soft golden haze as the first model strides onto the runway, the shimmer of silk catching every flash from the photographers. The front row leans forward, eyes drinking in every detail. Romeus sits tall beside Maya, his arm resting lazily on the back of her chair, wearing the self-satisfied smirk of a man convinced he owns the room. The early pieces are playful yet elegant. Eclat looks at its finest. Long flowing dresses in metallic pastels, tailored suits paired with jeweled chokers. Maya flips her hair each time a camera swings her way, pretending not to notice, though her smile widens with each click. Rami glances toward the photographers, noting every lens trained in their direction. He believes they're here for him, for them, for the perfect image of a power couple on the rise. Halfway through the show, the runway pauses. The massive LED screen at the far end fades to black, then bursts to life. Maya's face fills the screen in glossy high definition, her recent test shoot images, draped in Eclat Looks fabrics, staring sultrily into the camera. The announcer's voice purrs over the sound system, presenting the upcoming face of Eclat Looks. Maya Ferris. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Maya's cheeks flush with triumphant color. She grips Ramiz's hand under the table, eyes sparkling. He beams, nodding with a smug sort of approval. This is his doing, his achievement, proof he can mold someone into fashion royalty. In his mind, Maya's future is secure, and so is his influence in these elite circles. But then something shifts. The lights drop lower. The upbeat music that had underscored the earlier pieces fades out, replaced by a slow, resonant bass line, deep, rich, almost haunting. A single spotlight illuminates the runway entrance. The first model steps out in a floor-length gown, unlike anything shown before that night. It's sculpted silk, hugging the torso but flaring dramatically at the waist, shaped in a way that unmistakably evokes the curve of a pregnant belly. The neckline is strong, regal. The headpiece glitters with tiny star-like crystals. A murmur runs through the audience. Then another model follows. This one in a fitted suit designed with hidden panels of flowing fabric that billow like protective wings when she walks. The theme is unmistakable now. Not just beauty, but creation, resilience, protection. The collection builds in intensity. Each outfit carries a hidden nod to pregnancy. Sashes draped low to emphasize the stomach, belts curving in gentle arcs, fabrics layered to mimic the softness of life being nurtured. It's bold, unapologetic, and utterly captivating. Whispers dart through the VIP section. Who's behind this? This wasn't in the previews. Then the announcer's voice returns, steady and deliberate. And now, our final collection, a tribute to the woman who made it all possible. On the screen, in elegant gold script, a name appears. Alina Khan. Ramez freezes. Maya's smile falters. The applause is instant, thunderous. Cameras whip toward the front row, toward the mayor's wife, toward the dignitaries, and toward the empty chair that, until minutes ago, had seemed irrelevant. The music swells. The models take their final walk, their gowns flowing like waves, each one carrying the same symbolic curve, the silhouette of motherhood reimagined as power, elegance, and prestige. Somewhere in the shadows, Alina watches the scene unfold exactly as she had planned, her lips curving into the faintest smile. She isn't just reclaiming her place. She's rewriting the narrative, and tonight, the whole world will see it. The applause from the final walk fades, replaced by a moment of expectant silence. On the giant LED backdrop, the Eclat Looks logo glows gold against a black void. Then the CEO, impeccably dressed in a midnight blue suit, steps onto the runway holding the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice carries over the hushed crowd. Tonight is more than fashion, it is vision, and none of this would have been possible without a certain someone. Cameras flash. In the front row, Ramez leans back, his arm draped casually around Maya's chair, expecting the CEO to thank him. The CEO smiles warmly. Please join me in welcoming our majority investor, Mrs. Alina Khan. Gasps ripple like a shockwave through the hall. Whispers erupt. Alina Khan, the wife, but she wasn't supposed to be here. Reporters surge forward, their lenses snapping. Like fireworks, Ramiz's hand slips from Maya's chair. He freezes, a faint flicker of panic crossing his face. Maya's carefully painted smile twitches, her fingers curling into the satin of her gown. From the back of the hall, Alina rises. The spotlight finds her instantly. She moves slowly, deliberately, each step unhurried yet magnetic. The black velvet gown hugs her frame, the subtle shimmer in the fabric catching the light. Then, with one smooth motion, she unties her wrap and lets it fall, revealing the gentle but undeniable curve of her pregnancy. The air changes. Cameras click in a frenzy. People shift in their seats. Some glance at Ramiz, whose face has tightened into a mask of forced composure. Alina keeps her chin lifted as she walks the length of the runway toward the CEO. Her heels click against the polished floor, measured unwavering, like the slow tick of a clock running out for someone in the room. The CEO extends a hand. She takes it, stepping onto the stage as though she belongs there because she does. When she reaches the microphone, the applause has already begun, hesitant at first, then swelling. She waits for it to fade, her gaze sweeping the audience. Thank you, she says, her voice even calm but carrying a weight that silences the room. I'm honored to stand here tonight, surrounded by beauty, art, and innovation. Eclat Looks is not just a brand, it is a vision born of persistence, faith, and yes, loyalty. Her eyes rest briefly, almost lazily, on Ramiz. In life, loyalty is tested most when the world believes you are invisible. When you give everything time, love, resources, without demanding the spotlight. Some people mistake that for weakness. She lets the pause hang, her gaze sweeping back to the crowd. But true strength, it doesn't shout. It builds. Quietly, unshakably, every camera in the hall is trained on her now. In the front row, Maya shifts uncomfortably, realizing too late that the woman she thought was absent has orchestrated every moment of this night. I have always believed that beauty should honor those who make it possible, Alina continues. So tonight's finale, the designs celebrating the pregnant former, dedicated to women everywhere who create, nurture, and rebuild, even when they are underestimated. The applause comes again, louder this time. People are standing. She smiles faintly, a controlled curve of lips that never reaches her eyes. And to those who forget where they came from, remember this. The foundation you stand on may not always remain beneath your feet. The hall explodes with claps, whistles, and flashes. The mayor's wife rises, leading a standing ovation. The CEO beams. Ramiz does not move. Alina steps down from the stage, every stride a statement. She returns to her front row seat, not beside Ramiz but between the mayor's wife and a tech mogul accepting congratulations. With the poise of someone who has already won. And in the pit of Ramiz's stomach, the truth settles cold. The night he thought would make him shine has become her stage entirely. The atmosphere outside the grand hall was a frenzy of camera flashes and urgent voices. Journalists jostled against velvet ropes, microphones extended, like spears toward the exits. The moment the finale ended, the crowd inside had erupted into a low hum of disbelief. And now that energy had spilled onto the street, Ramiz and Maya emerged first, hand in hand, but gone was the confident swagger they had worn on the red carpet. Ramiz's jaw was tight, his eyes darting between reporters. Clearly aware of the pointed stares from guests filtering out behind them, Maya, still trying to plaster on a smile, glanced nervously at the wall of flashing lights ahead. The first question hit like a bullet. Ramiz, is it true your wife owns Eclat Looks? Before he could answer, another voice shouted, why wasn't she at your side tonight? Followed quickly by, how long have you been seeing your mistress? The word mistress seemed to freeze Maya mid-step. Cameras zoomed in, catching the slight twitch at the corner of her mouth. She recovered quickly, tossing her hair over her shoulder. But the tension in her fingers where they clung to Ramiz's arm betrayed her. Inside, Alina remained seated for a few moments longer, letting the crowd part for her like water around a ship's bow. Guests leaned in to whisper, some raising their phones for discreet photos, others boldly congratulating her. The mayor's wife squeezed her hand with a conspiratorial smile, murmuring, that was exquisite, my dear. By the time Alina stepped into the lobby, the red carpet outside had descended into chaos. Reporters had split into two swarming clusters, one trying to chase down Ramiz and Maya as they hurried toward their car, the other waiting for her. Her entrance was deliberate. She didn't rush, didn't wave. She simply walked, head high. The black velvet gown shimmering under the lobby lights, her baby bump a silent statement in itself. The security team flanked her, parting the crowd without a word. But she allowed the cameras a few seconds of clear view, just enough for every angle to be captured. Out on the street, Ramiz's troubles deepened. Investors who had been at the event were already sending terse messages to their assistants, instructing them to pause or reconsider joint ventures. In the world of high fashion and elite branding, perception was everything, and right now Ramiz's image was toxic. Maya made the mistake of trying to control the narrative. When a journalist asked her how it felt to discover the brand was controlled by Ramiz's wife, she laughed, a high, sharp sound that didn't match her eyes, and said, oh, I'm sure she just wanted to feel relevant again. The words were a match to gasoline. Within minutes, clips of her comment were circulating online, overlaid with captions like Mistress mocks, pregnant wife, and cold as couture. The internet pounced, dissecting her tone, her smirk, even the designer gown she wore, which, ironically, was one of the new Eclat Looks pieces Alina had approved. Meanwhile, Alina's short, precise speech from the stage was trending worldwide. Fashion bloggers hailed it as the most graceful takedown in Fashion Week history. Business analysts praised her strategic genius. Women's advocacy groups shared clips under hashtags liked. By the time Ramiz and Maya's car pulled away, they were no longer the glamorous couple who had arrived earlier that evening. They were, in the eyes of the public, a cautionary tale. The arrogant businessman and his ill-prepared arm candy, undone in front of the very world they had tried to impress. And Alina, she didn't need to chase the headlines. They were already hers. The city skyline shimmered under the golden blush of dawn. Tall glass towers catching the first light as if bowing to a new ruler. Inside the headquarters of Eclat Looks, the air buzzed with a different kind of energy, not the cutthroat tension of fashion politics, but the hum of purpose. It had been weeks since the scandal that shook the industry. The night of the reveal had not just dismantled Ramiz's carefully curated image, it had detonated it in public view. In the days that followed, journalists unearthed more about his shady dealings. Investors who had once sipped champagne with him now treated his calls like the plague. His upcoming real estate venture collapsed after key backers withdrew, citing ethical concerns. His social invitations dried up faster than spilled perfume on hot concrete, and Maya, she evaporated from his life without ceremony. One morning, Rameus woke to find her side of the closet empty, her phone disconnected. A few weeks later, tabloid whispers suggested she'd been spotted at a Monaco yacht party, clinging to the arm of a silver-haired billionaire. The world had learned she was a chameleon, shedding her old skin whenever it suited her climb. Alina, meanwhile, had stepped fully into the light. No longer the silent wife tucked in the shadows, she was now the face of Eclat looks, though not as a model, but as the visionary behind the brand's resurgence. At her first official press conference, she wore a tailored white suit that carried the same unspoken message as her Fashion Week entrance: elegance with an edge. Her first initiative wasn't another line of handbags or a couture gown. It was a foundation, the Eclat Foundation for Mothers. Its mission was clear and unapologetic: to provide financial, legal, and emotional support to pregnant women abandoned by their partners. For Alina, it wasn't charity, it was a statement. Fashion changes trends, she told the press, but dignity should never go out of style. Board members initially questioned whether tying a high-end brand to a cause so raw would dilute its glamour, but the public's reaction proved otherwise. Celebrities pledged donations. Influencers shared their own stories. Survivors sent letters, thanking Alina for giving their pain a voice. The brand's stock didn't just recover, it soared. And today was more than just another day at headquarters. In her private office, sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, bathing the room in warmth. On the sleek, matte black desk sat a bouquet of orchids. A handwritten note from the CEO to the woman who redefined the runway. Alina sat in a high-backed chair, her black hair cascading over her shoulders, and her arms wrapped in a blush-pink blanket was her newborn daughter. The baby's tiny fingers curled instinctively around Alina's thumb, a silent promise of futures yet to be written. She gazed out at the city, the same city where she had once felt invisible. Every glittering tower seemed to bow slightly in the morning breeze, acknowledging that this skyline was now hers. Her mind wandered briefly to the night she'd stood on the Fashion Week stage, her baby bump a beacon of truth, her speech cutting, sharper than any scandal. That night had been a turning point, but this was the victory. Her voice, low and steady, carried over the soft coos of her daughter. They thought they were walking a runway of power, she murmured, almost to herself. A slow smile touched her lips. But I built the stage. And with that, she rose, cradling her child, ready to step into the next chapter, one she had designed entirely on her own terms.